This just in, Ray Epps, the Arizona man accused by some conservatives of instigating the January 6th riots on behalf of the federal government, has been charged with one misdemeanor count in connection to the insurrection. Epps was charged with a count of disorderly or disruptive conduct on restrictive grounds, according to court records.
According to The Hill, Epps was falsely accused by Fox News of being a government agent who was stirring up trouble. Messages seeking comment from an attorney representing Epps were not immediately returned today. So to remind everybody what the theory is, Ray Epps is someone who was present on January 6th. He was there the evening before. He can be seen on video urging the night before, saying we might need to storm the Capitol. We got to be planned and prepared to go in. Even some other conservative activists, people around him, start saying, no, we're not going to do that. You're a Fed. If you're telling us to do that, you're a Fed. On the actual January 6th day, I don't think he went necessarily into the Capitol. He's being charged with being on restricted ground or something like that. Tucker Carlson and others have suggested that he was a government plant to encourage January 6 people to go into the Capitol and get them in trouble the way that entrapment sometimes works for the government. The government agents, contact young Muslim men and try to get them to agree to do a terrorist plot. The Gretchen Whitmer kidnapped the governor of Michigan. The kidnapping plot was substantially, everybody involved in it were paid informants that were paid to progress it to a point at which they could be charged. So that does happen. So it's not crazy. Sure. The idea, and the mainstream media is going to automatically dismiss this idea because they don't understand that these things actually do happen. All of that said, no evidence has been presented whatsoever that he was working for the government or anything of that nature.
But the evidence was the tacit, the soft evidence was that he hadn't been charged.
Him. Yeah. So now he is charged. So I'm seeing this both ways.
Yeah.
Lots of mainstream people are saying, well, this should debunk the theory once and for all. Your idea was he's not being charged, he's being protected because he was secretly working with the government, so they're not going to charge him. They're saying, well, now he's being charged, so you can't say that anymore. But on the other hand, I'm seeing plenty of conservative people saying, well, they're charging him, but with this, very, very slight little charge. And
right.
So that's a cover story, right. Basically.
So, for example, Charlie Kirk of Turning Points USA tweeted in response just a few minutes ago, not suspicious at all. Nearly 3 years after January 6th, Ray Epps is finally charged with disorderly conduct. That's right, the man who yelled for people to storm the Capitol, who was videotaped multiple times actually trying to incite a riot, somehow avoids seditious conspiracy with no terrorism enhancement, while people who never enter the Capitol are rotting away in a D.C. jail. Everything is on the level, folks. So I don't know. Should they have thrown the book at him to get the conservatives off his back?
Well, no, and again, I can't. People will be like, why don't you believe in this? No evidence has been presented that he is a government asset. I understand the theory. I don't think the theory is ridiculous because, as I've described, there are other cases of government agents behaving in exactly this way. I don't instinctively trust law enforcement or government agents. Yeah. But I can't believe in something for which there's just no evidence whatsoever.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, so he's being charged. It's a very light charge. He's going to plead guilty. That's the way it's working here because he's being charged on information. That means he's going to plead guilty to whatever it is. It's going to be a very light sentence. Nobody's throwing the book at him. He's not getting a 30-year terror enhancement, even though he did. He is caught on tape advocating for people to go into the Capitol, that we will have to go into the Capitol. So, I see why people are going to say, the way they threw the book at the Proud Boys leaders, including Enrique Tarrio, who wasn't even there, say he helped organize this terrorist attack, and that's why he has to languish in prison for 30 years. But there's a guy who was actually there the night before who told people to go in. They did go in, and he's getting the kind of minor trespassing charge.
What do we know about...
Do you know what I'm saying?
No, I know what you're saying. What do we know about how it came to light in the Gretchen Whitmer plot that there were so many paid informants involved? Because one would think that if in that context the truth ultimately came out, that we would expect a similar type of investigation to yield something about Ray Epps, or we could finally resolve that he was in fact acting on his own reconnaissance.
I mean, I believe it came out when the charges happened. The charging document lists, asset 1, asset 2, and lists the amount of money they were paid, and then you can do a little puzzle process of elimination to figure out who was who.
So does that suggest that now that Ray Epps is being charged without any evidence that he was in fact an asset, that maybe there's no there?
Yeah, I think
Or did the government learn its lesson about how to do its books
what
better?
They say, that this was right. This is being covered up at a higher level. Again, I'm not trying to disdain that theory, but I can't. There's nothing to it other than a belief that he was responsible.
Taking a step back, what is the argument that Ray Epps was a Fed do for Republicans broadly politically with respect to 1-6? It does feel like it's a way to make the argument that 1-6, which I think reflects poorly on Republican leadership and is an embarrassing moment for many Republicans, and it has served to create a wedge between former Trump voters and people who are looking to make a decision in this Republican primary. Saying that this is something that wouldn't have been done but for the government's instigation allows people to say, well, yeah, it was bad, but it wasn't our fault, or it wasn't Trump's fault, or it wasn't the Republican Party's fault. Is that about right?
Yeah, I think that's what they're trying to do. And of course, there were a lot of government. There was some number of government agents and assets in the crowd. That's something that with the Capitol Police Chief, I believe, was the position. He told that to Tucker. There was that interview aired on Tucker Carlson. They did that interview before Fox News got let go of him. So again, I don't want to you don't want to just believe every kind of establishment narrative here that this is totally impossible. This would never happen. That said, look. I don't mean to. I was there. I watched the chaos unfold. It looked to me like a spontaneous riot because of the people were rioting, and it didn't look to me like it was being specifically directed either by Proud Boy leader type people or people in the crowd who are actually working for the government. It looked like the way if you attend protests that turn ugly, they sometimes do. It's not predictable. It's not planned. It's just the crowd gets really worked up and heated, and then some number of people cross the line. That's what happened, and I blame the things Trump said in a philosophical sense. I don't think he's legally culpable for it. He might have been constitutionally culpable for it, but they acquitted him, so we got to move on. And I think mostly people who broke the law. I mean, I believe in individual responsibility. If you engage in trespassing, it's not somebody tricked you. I mean, nobody made you. I say this in a lot of contexts. You have to bear the cost of that. And so I think it's right to charge them individually for the crimes they actually committed, the trespassing, the smashing of things, etc. But that's why I find this whole organized Proud Boy terrorist plot thing so laughable and illiberal.
Yeah, I don't know. Not from a legal perspective, because I agree. I don't think that anything that Trump said amounts to incitement technically. But from a sort of a moral perspective, if I were one of the people that were charged on 1-6, I would be pretty frustrated, because I do think I've seen interviews with folks who got caught up in this, who really did believe that they weren't going to face any criminal penalty because they thought the president of the United States was telling the truth when he said he had evidence that he had in fact won the election, that they were vindicating their constitutional right and defending democracy. And having been told that and misled in those ways, and then end up facing criminal penalties that the president himself never faced, would make me chagrined, to say the least.
He sold them a timeshare. It's that kind of thing. It is. I feel bad for them, but also don't be so gullible, and don't trespass
to believe the president
buildings.
of the United States when he says that an election was stolen and taking unprecedented actions to try to stay in power. I mean, I obviously don't support Trump, so I wasn't going to be inclined to believe what he said, but I can easily imagine the shoe being on a different kind of a foot and believing that the leader of the actual country,
but believing all of that
at the time,
this is entering the building was not going to change anything. Was not because they were just going to meet later.
But that's not what they believed. That's not what Trump was representing and his allies and associates were representing. That's part of the issue. And what they were hoping, I mean, the plan as set out in the now infamous memo, that's the basis of the the Georgia charges, is that Trump and his co-conspirators in the weeks before had submitted these fake slates of electors. And they were hoping the day of that Mike Pence would say, I have two competing slates of electors and we need to throw this to the House. That's what, there was an activity on the day of that they were hoping manifested in Donald Trump being in president.
I don't think Mike Pence didn't do that. He said he wasn't going to do that. Even if he did do that, I don't think the Supreme Court would allow it.
He said he wasn't going to do it, and that's why the crowd started saying, hang Mike Pence and putting up a guillotine. That's why all of that was happening. That's why Mike Pence became a focus of the mob.
Yeah. I think if you worked yourself into that position, it's mostly on you, brother.
All right. Okay. Well, we'll have more Rising for you right after this.